Hello and welcome to Fantasy Pancake. This is the first ever episode of Pancake Stacks, and we have an absolutely incredible guest. We're going to take through two players that he absolutely loves for week one, two that he hates for week one, and his favorite pancake stack of the week. Let's get into it. So that's right, this is our first ever episode of Pancake Stacks, and there is no one I would rather have as my first guest than the podfather of the Wildcard network, one of the brightest minds on DLF, one of the reasons I got into DLF, and definitely one of the reasons I got into Fantasy Wildcard and the podcast space in the first place. I don't think I could give you a grand enough intro, but Kev, thank you so much for joining me. How are you doing?
I'm doing absolutely fantastically. Thank you so much for having me on the show tonight. And look, it's the eve of the NFL Week 1. It's such an exciting time of the season, and it's going to be a great show.
Yeah, it's really exciting. So we're recording this on Thursday night, which means it's going to come out tomorrow. But it means the NFL is about to kick off. What are your plans for either watching tonight, or if you're just going to watch in the morning? What's your plans for Sunday?
I mean, tonight I'm working tomorrow, so it'll be. I might do a bit of scrolling if I have a trip to the toilet in the night, but it's more than likely going to be catch up in the morning, and then Sunday night it'll be. I'll be going to my brother's house, and we'll watch a bit of Red Zone together for a few hours. How about yourself, mate?
Yeah, I'm much the same. So if the Rams are ever playing on Thursday night football or Sunday night football, I always tell myself that I'm not going to watch, and then I always go, I'll just stay up for the first quarter, and then I go, I'll just do the first half, and then I always just end up doing the full game.
Yeah.
So I find what I have to do, because obviously tonight's going to be such a good game as well, like it's such a fantastic choice for the kickoff. I'm going to have to make sure that I'm asleep before like 12:30, because if I'm still awake when it approaches kickoff, I will be awake until 5 o'clock in the morning watching the entire thing. So I'm just going to try and get myself off to sleep beforehand, and then I will just catch up in the morning. But then on Sunday, I've got my best mate coming round, my brother and his wife coming round. We do a full roast dinner. I'm going to settle in for 7 hours of commercial-free football, and I'm absolutely buzzing.
And remember to send that clip to Paul Pickin as well.
Just because he can't watch the first one.
Just because he can't, yeah.
Absolutely furious about it. So let's get into the meat of the show. So this is a slightly different way of doing start sits, the feature called Pancake Stacks. We are going to be asking each guest two players that they love, two players that they hate, and their favorite stack for the week ahead. So with week one obviously coming up incredibly soon, how prepared do you feel? Have you started setting lineups already? You started doing rankings, getting everything together?
Yeah, I was pretty worried actually because, I play in quite a few leagues, and like a few months back, I had my finger on the pulse. Everything was going well, and then it's just been such a busy period with family stuff and work-related stuff. So it was kind of one of those things where there's something lurking and you don't want to quite tackle it. So I did set all my lineups today. It was less leagues than I thought I was in, so I'm still over 30, 40 leagues, but that was better than expected, and a lot of that's Dynasty Best Ball. Lineups are set, auto subs are set. If that works, we don't know on Sleepy yet. But yeah, what I do is I tend to do the run on a Thursday, and then I'll do a follow up on the Sunday. But we'll see how this auto sub goes. If it goes well, it's less work for someone that's a portfolio dynasty player like myself.
Yeah, I was going to ask how many lineups you had to set. I went through and realized I've got about 30 leagues, but it's about 18 or 19 lineups, which I think is vaguely manageable.
Yeah.
But then I started doing it earlier today and went, oh no, this actually is quite a lot now we get in season. I think that dynasty players like ourselves, the off season is the main part for us doing all of the startups. And suddenly you get in season, you remember you actually have to manage that team, and it is slightly more difficult than you thought.
Yeah, you've got your dynasty and redraft, but then I love playing a lot of DFS as well. So I'm probably doing 20 to 25 DFS lineups which
Wow.
I think it's kind of easier because you've got a feel for who you're going to go and you just go bang, bang, bang. But still, that takes probably a good hour and a half ago.
Yeah, I went through and did my DFS lineups earlier today, and I've only got 3, but even that took enough time. I try and make a point of not noting down the players that I think about selecting and don't, because I did it last year and I figured out that if I'd selected Derek Henry over David Montgomery, I would have won about £400 or £500.
Wow, nice. Well,
yeah,
nice.
but I didn't. I won about £10. So let's get into your first player that you love, and I was absolutely delighted to see you suggest this name. This is the player that I have been incredibly in on all off-season. Kev, tell us about your first player that you love for week 1.
Yeah, I do genuinely love this guy. I've been a big fan of his all off-season, and someone that I'm really looking forward to see how he does this year. It's not traditionally what I call a start sit option because he's the QB5 on the week in expert consensus ranking, but I just want to shout this guy out because he's someone I love. And if you're playing something like a DFS lineup where you've got the full field to have a go at, this is a guy I'm gravitating towards. It's Anthony Richardson, a guy that was first in fantasy points per drop back last season. That pace was very similar to Lamar Jackson's record-breaking fantasy season. So I know it's a small sample size, but really good what I saw there. And in a QB, it's a lot of things that I'll look for on a weekly basis. Home team, playing in a dome, high over under for the points total of that game. It's going to provide more scoring opportunities. And actually, I also like the fact that he's an underdog at home to the Texans. He's expected to play from behind, which that will drive passing volume. When there's more passing attempts, there's more opportunity for scrambling and rushing upside as well. So I like that with the type of guy that Richardson is. Plus, the pace of play was top 3 last season when he was on the field. And Shane Steichen's a smart guy that's worked with some excellent dual threat QBs in the past, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, etc. So lots to like there. I think going a little bit deeper, looking back to last season, because remember, this is week 1. There's no data points yet. So some of the trends last season could continue for this season. So one thing I noted was the Texans against Konami QBs were a little bit shaky. For example, Kyler Murray's second game back off the injury, he had 50 yards and a touchdown. The playoff loss to the Ravens, Lamar Jackson had 100 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns in that game. So will that continue? We don't know, but it was just something to note as an additional thing in favour of Anthony Richardson. So ECR, number 5 of the week. I think that's a really solid pick in week 1.
I absolutely love it. And I think in terms of where you're looking at his ADP and where he was being drafted in redraft leagues in the off-season, he was going a full sort of round later or a few rounds later than those other elite quarterbacks. But one of the questions I wanted to ask you about Anthony Richardson is, what do you think is his ceiling in terms of season long? So obviously we know Anthony Richardson can absolutely break a slate because we saw it last season in the games that he played. But obviously, with the then floor that we saw the rest of the season, do you think Anthony Richardson has the ceiling, the weapons around him, the offense around him, a talented enough offensive line to finish as the QB1 in 2024?
I certainly do, yeah. I think, look, it was first in fantasy points per drop back last season with those weapons, and they've added Adonai Mitchell, who I think is going to be a great addition. He's already playing in 2 wide receiver sets. Fully healthy Jonathan Taylor. I think that's going to take a little bit of pressure off. All eyes on Anthony Richardson. And yeah, I think, let's say somebody's got him 6 or 7 in Dynasty. He's got to be higher in redraft because the worries in Dynasty is injuries, will he miss a game, etc. The long-term sort of performance concerns. In redraft and in sort of your weekly start sets, he's got to be like, for me, top 3 is the thought process I'm thinking, because he truly has got a breakout potential like Jalen Hurts had in his major breakout season.
So does that mean Anthony Richardson is someone that you're then targeting way heavier in a DFS type format instead of in a best ball season long type format?
Yeah, because it's a weekly game. It's every week is essentially a season. So he's someone that at the price as well that is at in in DFS, it's super appealing to go after him. And you know what? If he gets injured, that's 1 week you've lost. Whereas if you're playing in a season, then that's potentially your season gone. There's many mini seasons in a DFS lineup.
Yeah, I think that's completely fair. And I've already in the DFS lineups that I've built started looking at a Richardson and AD Mitchell stack with a Nico Collins bring back, which I assume you're going to have plenty of the same. I haven't got round to the Wildcard DFS pod yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if the entire thing is just focused on that game.
Yeah, it does get a shout out or two.
Well, let's move on from a player that you absolutely love for week 1 to a player that you don't like so much. And I thought this was a really interesting one because this is a player that's been quite controversial in the off-season. They saw a value spike when no football was happening, which is never a particularly good sign, and then have seen that value drop as we've got closer to the season ahead. Could you tell us a little bit about the first player that you don't like for week 1?
Yeah, I think first of all, before we get into the specifics of week 1, this is a guy that I have traditionally been lower on all off season and coming into your redraft, your best ball DFS type season. I think Zamir White is the guy that I'm talking about here. The archetype is a 2-down running back on one of the worst offenses in the NFL, which for me, that is a recipe for disaster. I think people will look on, like people playing DFS will look on DraftKings, FanDuel, etc., and see the positive matchup. It's in green, I think, against the Chargers, based on last season's defense. So I won't be shocked if people do try and fit him into lineups and think, oh yeah, they're going to have a chance against the Chargers. There's volume guaranteed, albeit in the run game. But my thoughts on this is, first of all, is they're on the road. It's the lowest over-under on the slate, which means not many scoring opportunities. Touchdowns going to drive Zamir White's production. 2-down guy, which I mentioned, so game script can go out of the window if they do get behind. And this is the Chargers' new coach, Jim Harbaugh's first game. I think he's going to toughen them up. He's going to make them hard to beat. We're not quite sure how it's going to look on their side. From previously, it's been a high passing offense. Will they try and control the game more, slow pace play, etc.? We don't know. That will sort of stifle as much opportunities for White. And then last time the Chargers played the Raiders, they got 63 points put on them. So I think that Chargers defense is going to have a little bit to prove in a home opener for a new head coach. Where he's going on the week, Zamir White, it's expert consensus ranking of running back 27. I think there's guys going lower than him that I'll be more interested in, players like J. Spears as a home dog with the passing environment, any of the Cincinnati running backs, and also the guy on the other side that's going to be playing at home for the head coach in a better game script, which would be Gus Edwards.
Yeah, and you'll have seen me talk a lot about Gus Edwards recently in a video that I put out about 4 running backs that I really like. I have to shoehorn in the link to another video.
I said it.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. So with Zamir White, you obviously mentioned that you see him as a 2-down back. Is it Alex Mattison that you're thinking then takes the 3rd down workload, or Dylan Laube? I don't actually know how to pronounce his name.
Yeah, it's a combination of things. I think firstly, looking at Zamir White, I don't think he has the tools. So I would automatically put it on someone else. I think Mattison, he's done all right as a pass catcher, but they do have a couple of pass catching specialists on the rosters. Dylan Laube, I'm not 100% on his name either.
No.
As someone that in time will be the pass catching back, but they've also got Amir Abdullah there. And factoring in in the short game, in the easy stuff, there's going to be Brock Bowers. Jacoby Myers is still underrated as well. And the second tight end, one of the better second tight ends in the league, in Michael Mayer. So I think the short passing game, it might not be to the running back. But if it is, I feel it will be probably Abdullah to start the season. And then as Dylan Laube grows into the role, it'll be him down the stretch.
I suppose the problem is that even if, say, Zamir White did have a 3-down workload, he's going to be, at best, the 5th target in the offense. Because obviously you mentioned, so Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, Brock Bowers, Michael Mayer. So even then, there's not going to be enough passing success in this offense for that workload to go around. There's very few offenses in football that we'd want the fifth highest pass catching volume, and the Gardner Minshew-led offense definitely isn't one of them. The thing that I definitely wanted to bring up about Zamir White, and it's another reason I was particularly low on him, is this ongoing thing that we see a running back behind an established starter shine in a limited workload, get the heavy workload, and suddenly look not great. We've seen it the last few seasons with, funnily enough, Alexander Mattison, who is now on the same team, and with Tony Pollard as well.
Yeah.
And Zamir White is the next in the line. So it's a player who gains, huge dynasty value in the off season, even though no football has actually been played, and we've seen that value plummet. Is this something that tends to worry you when players' dynasty value changes, not because of something they've done, but because of sort of depth chart changing around them? Or is this something that you try to target?
I think I try and just take an overall view of an asset and think specifically like, what is it that makes up my perception, that view of the player? If there's certain individuals that it's all about a situation, for example, like if you're in on Zamir White in, say, February, March time, he's had a pretty good off-season. They added Alexander Mattison, who's been potentially is going to turn into a journeyman backup type. No one of note in the draft. So anybody that was on him in February is probably still on him now, if not more. But I think a lot of the people that are in on him, it's to do with what's around him as opposed to what he can do. And people will look at that 4-game sample and see there was some receptions in there. He wasn't doing a lot with those receptions. To me, it just reminded me a little bit of a different sample size. Damian Pierce, a guy that got some passing production as a rookie, but it was like 5-6 yards of reception, nothing explosive. You need more in your pass catching running back than what Zamir White showed in that sample.
Yeah, and I think the summary, which I think is a really smart point, is that if you're not going to have a pass catching workload, you need touchdowns. And if you're on a bad offense and you're not having pass catching workload or touchdowns, the volume on the ground is going to have to be unbelievable. But even if you're getting a touchdown and if you're only catching 2 balls, even if you're going to run for 150 yards a game, that's still sort of way behind the pace set last season by Kyren Williams, Raheem Mostert, Devon Achane, Alvin Kamara, and then CMC well up ahead. So even if you're, the most elite runner of the ball in football, which Zamir White is not, you have to have those other aspects to your game if you're going to be able to be an actual utilized piece in fantasy. So I do really, really like this one. I was entirely unsurprised when I saw the next guy that you wanted. The only thing I was surprised about was that it wasn't his quarterback. But I know his quarterback is someone that you're incredibly, incredibly in on. And obviously, you mentioned him on the TH Fantasy Football My Guys episode recently, which I was also on. Who is your second love of the week, Kev?
Yeah, it's a guy that I've traditionally not had love for throughout his whole career. And I'm not just going to say I'm in on him because of his new QB. That would be unfair. I think it's a little bit situational, but I think a lot of it is to do with what we've not seen and what he's not had at QB previously. And that's Terry McLaurin, a guy that, thinking about the one game this week, road underdog at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a team that were pretty poor against the pass game last season. I think they're going to be the same this season, but also a really strong rushing defense. So I think it's going to be a pass funnel type game script. I see positive volume for him in this game. So thinking about his target competition, Jahan Dotson just got traded to my Eagles. Go Birds. And then you look at tight end Benson, that he's not ready yet to shine. There's guys like Diami Brown, newly signed Noah Brown as well there. So I think any passing game volume's got to go through Terry McLaurin. I like the addition of Cliff Kingsbury. He was top 2 in the pace of play in pre-season, so all looking good from a pass volume standpoint. And yeah, look, I'm a Jaden Daniels fan. He was my guy on the TH Fantasy Football Show. He's someone that I'm really in on. I am aware this week it's a little bit of a riskier play because you've got a rookie on the road at Tampa Bay. We don't know what to fully expect, and it could be a learning curve early on in the season for Jaden Daniels, but there's lots to like about sort of the pass volume, how I think the game will go, but also he's ranked 26th on the week, so I'm not expecting him to be wide receiver one, but I think he can touch that top 12 with how I expect that game to play out. But lastly, I think this pick was a really key one for me because on the Fantasy Wildcard DFS show, my good friend and co-host Ali made the selection of Terry McLaurin as someone to watch out for this week. So it just means that if I'm wrong on Terry McLaurin, he's also going to be wrong. And I get a bit of enjoyment out of that.
And in my recent video about wide receivers who are being undervalued, I mentioned Terry McLaurin. So all three of us would be wrong if we're all wrong.
Perfect.
I wanted to ask you with Terry McLaurin about. Yeah, I wanted to ask you with Terry McLaurin about Cliff Kingsbury a little bit, and obviously the lack of target competition. So Cliff Kingsbury, when he was in Arizona, the pace of play is absolutely tremendous. But what he doesn't do is he doesn't move wide receivers around the field. So he actually has specific left wide receiver and right wide receiver roles. Which DeAndre Hopkins, I think, lined left outside wide receiver like 85% of snaps. So he doesn't do a lot of the kind of moving players around, hiding them, doing different lineups to try and get them free releases. He just backs them to go out there and beat their man. With Terry McLaurin, obviously, we all love the fact that there's no target competition. But are you worried at all about the fact that offenses will likely know where he's going to be and that he's the guy that they're going to have to guard? So putting a safety shell over him or just making sure that he's double covered the entire game. Because if you stop him, I know you've got Jane Daniels' legs, but you've only got sort of dusty Zach Ertz to stop after that.
Yeah, I think with Kingsbury, he's a creative play caller. So I think whilst the wide receivers tend to be stuck on one side, let's hope that Jaden Daniels can throw whichever way Terry McLaurin is. Imagine if he can't throw to his left or something like that. I think Max said that about Jalen Hurts a few years ago. What an idiot. But I think there's creative ways that he can get the ball in his hands with some of these short screens. We've seen a lot of low A-dot from Jane Daniels in pre-season. And look, if it's a one-on-one situation, Terry McLaurin's a fantastic route runner. Like, he's someone that he has flash potential throughout his career. He was a top 18 wide receiver at one point in one of his years. And this is with a tough situation at QB for the Commanders over time. So I think this is the year he pulls it together and has potentially a wide receiver one type season, especially if it's a team that's going to be playing from behind a team that's got a low over-under for expected wins, high pace play. And I see McLaurin having like that breakout that DJ Moore did when he finally got a QB of note, where he finally makes that step, that breakout that's been teased for so long.
Yeah, and the thing with Terry McLaurin is that he is, with DJ Moore, he was always much younger than we thought, whereas Terry McLaurin is much older than we think. You know, I think he's either 28 or 29 already, even though he's only in the second year of his new deal. So if the breakout's going to come, it has to come relatively soon.
Yeah.
Let's move on to your second player that you hate for week one. And you'll notice with this one, I specifically say hate. This is a player that I have been really low on. And I'm really glad to see, I'm not sure if it's better to see we share the opinion and therefore we can revel in the fact that we're both right, or if we were different in it and we can have a bit of a debate. But Kev, why don't you tell us about the second player that you're lower on for week one?
Yeah, I nearly picked Cade Otton for very similar reasons, which will come apparent very soon. But anybody that knows me or has an inkling to me, they'll know that I've got a slight bit of OCD. So you realise that my picks today, QB, running back, wide receiver. I've finished with tight end. I've gone for Cole Kmet, someone that I was absolutely shocked that he's tight end 16 in expert content ranking at Fantasy Pros. that was a major shock to me. The fact that he's a home favourite, so if they get out to an early lead, the pass volume is going to be lower. And you mentioned earlier about fifth option in the passing offense. That's what Cole Kmet could potentially be, but actually it's probably even lower than that. Gerald Everett's a guy that's again linking into your shows. Someone that's stood out over Cole Kmet in pre-season and seems to be really favourable with this coaching staff. But Cole Kmet's always been touchdown dependent. This is one of the lower over-unders on the slate, so there's less touchdowns expected on the day. And then when I just think about looking at the other alternatives you've got in potential weekly start sits or waivers in one tight end redraft leagues, etc., or DFS, guys like Taysom Hill, Noah Fan, and your boy Colby Parkinson really stand out as better alternatives. So I'm fully off the Cole Kmet train this year.
Yeah, I can't really understand. I know that there was a little bit of hype, and obviously last season there was a stretch where he was a week winner. But I can't really understand why anyone would be starting Cole Kmet in fantasy football entirely at the moment, unless we're proven wrong. You know, like you said, the best case scenario for him is probably being the fifth pass catching option. They obviously have three fantastic wide receivers, a pass catching back in DeAndre Swift if he keeps his job, and then the best case is fifth, or even sixth if Gerald Everett takes his role. And Gerald Everett has been starting as the one tight end in three wide receiver sets in the preseason when he was playing with the starters. Obviously, with the Bears preseason, you do get a little bit more of an inkling of actually how it's going to work in the regular season because they have a rookie quarterback. So they are actually playing their starters for, at least a quarter, potentially the first half. So I can't really understand why you'd be looking at Cole Kmet and think this guy might be the second tight end on his own team. And even if he's the first tight end, he's not going to have a huge amount of volume. And you're still paying like a reasonably high price for him. Like, it's not like this is a guy who's going completely undrafted. This is still someone being drafted in almost every league. And so I absolutely can't see why you would be interested in Cole Kmet this season. So I completely agree with you on this one. In terms of like the potential touchdown upside, does the fact that, so Keenan Allen obviously had a fair amount of touchdowns last season, but historically in his career has been someone who struggled to get work in the red zone. DJ Moore, obviously a slightly smaller wide receiver. Rome Odunze, probably the best red zone threat on the team, but a rookie. We're not sure what his role is going to be. Does the touchdown upside at all interest you in Cole Kmet, that he's shown sure hands in the red zone and he's, by far the biggest piece in that offense, and quite a lot bigger than Gerald Everett as well, who's basically a wide receiver himself?
It's a dicey game because I think if you're scoring touchdowns at tight end, you're probably going to finish the tight end one on the week, just with how the landscape looks and everything like that. I think work it backwards is my sort of intuition on this. The fact that Caleb Williams, there's a lot of hype there. Is he going to throw 30 touchdowns as a rookie? I don't think he will. I think there's not been a Bears QB pass for 4,000 yards, potentially ever. I'll definitely not for a long time. No. So you're kind of thinking, what is the pass game upside for someone that's potentially fifth, sixth option in a team that might throw one or two touchdowns a game? There will be spike weeks because he has got a track record of touchdowns in the past couple of games. I think last season with double touchdowns. So I feel there will be weeks where he is usable, but trying to guess them weeks, it's going to be a nightmare, and you've not got that usual standard pass volume to get by in the weeks where he doesn't score a touchdown.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with these sort of very touchdown-dependent players, they are best ball players that you go, I want to start them when they score multiple touchdowns. Cole Kmet will probably have a 2-touchdown week, but I don't want to try and figure out when that's going to be. I completely agree with you. Let's get on to our final feature of the show, and this is the title of the show. This is our star feature, Pancake Stacks. Definitely a feature that I wanted to include, and not just a fun name. I would like you to name your favourite stack for week 1, looking at DFS, looking at redraft if you've managed to nail it in those teams, or if you want to make a trade in redraft or in Dynasty. What is your favourite team to stack in week 1 and with which players, Kev?
Yeah, so for this one, I'm gonna play a little bit dicey and go for Kyler Murray and Trey McBride. So obviously they're both highly thought of players. They're both high in their respective positions. But I think the reason I like this stack, first of all, I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I've got this stack in the JTT Cup. I've got it in the Scott Fish Bowl. So I'm hoping not only week 1, but throughout the season, this actually does a fantastic job for me and pulls me through in those tournaments. I think it's a way to sort of fade Marvin Harrison and play the contrary. I think he's a popular guy in the offense that teams will gravitate towards. And then it's a way to get exposure to Kyler Murray if you want to, because I think a lot of people think Kyler Murray, let's go Marvin. Go for the tight end as well. As long as the tight end's in the top 2 target share within the offense, that's absolutely fine to stack. And I think just bigger picture, I'm thinking this stack, it's a way to beat teams that have just Kyler Murray or just have Trey McBride, which I think will also be popular. So I think this week specifically, Buffalo on the road, again, it's high over under. It's a game where they're going to be playing from behind. Kyler Murray is a competent QB, and Trey McBride is someone that I think has the potential to lead that team in targets and also touchdowns. So yeah, that might be a little bit spiced with how good Marvin Harrison is projected to be, but I really think the sky's the limit for Trey McBride, and he's going to have a monster season. And I want to be part of it. I like these two guys individually. I like them as a combo, and I've got tons of exposure across Dynasty leagues, and I'll be getting some of them in DFS as well this week.
Yeah, no, I really like this one. And the other thing about the matchup is that Matt Milano, who's the main middle linebacker on the Buffalo Bills, is going to be missing week 1. So you have an even weaker, potentially middle of the field for Trey McBride to target. No, I absolutely love this one. And I think people are really sleeping on Kyler Murray. Trey McBride is a dominant player and is in that group of tight ends that I've seen people value any which way, whether it's a top 4 or top 5 with Laporta, McBride, Kelsey, Andrews, and then potentially throw Kincaid as well in there if he mags. McBride, is going pretty high, but people are really undervaluing Kyler. This is someone who we know has that Konami code ability. I think people are just low on, they hear the name Cardinals and they're a bit worried about it, but this offense is definitely more exciting. The question I wanted to ask about Trey McBride is dynasty related, and it's, is he your dynasty tight end 1? And where would you take whoever your dynasty tight end 1 is in a startup at this point?
So in terms of my affinity to tight ends, like if you rank it sort of in order and combining him where the market sees them, I want to put him at 1. I think he definitely deserves to be in that top tier, along with Sam Laporta at this stage. I think for me, it's probably a tier of 2. There's a couple of guys knocking on the door that are getting really close, Kincaid, and I think Brock Bowers deserves to still be up there. But I think just purely how the market views Sam Laporta, I can't put Trey McBride above him. I think with Laporta, he's going, around maybe 2 rounds ahead of McBride in some startups I've seen and been part of. So as much as I want to put him up there, I just feel that you have to play the market. Why should I put Trey McBride up there when if I try and sell Trey McBride, I'm not getting the same price for if I try and sell Sam Laporta. So that's the reason why he's my number 2, but in that same tier. And in terms of where I'd take him in a startup, I think I'm happy to go for him round 4, but I wouldn't be shocked if by this time next season he's in round 3. Also bearing in mind the landscape is changing where there's more options available. So I think the years are gone where you'd see a Travis Kelce in round 1 or 2. You don't need to do that because that top tier, that top 6 or 7 if you're thinking of a bigger tier, and making it more shallow. There's more supply, so in that respect, there's got to be less demand at the top.
Yeah, I was thinking about this earlier when you were talking about kind of what it takes to be a tight end one, because I feel like the past 4 or 5 years at least, there's been, tight end 1 to 3. I mean, tight end 1 was normally a class on its own, and then maybe tight end 2 to 4 is relatively close, but 40, 50 points away, and then tight end 5 through 12 is absolutely nothing. It's 7 points a week. But looking at redraft this season, I'm really comfortable with anything down to about Evan Ingram as my tight end 1, so looking around tight end 9 or 10. I wonder if this season we do see a slight resurgence, and actually becoming a tight end 1 on the week is a slightly more premium thing, is a slightly harder thing to do. You have so many assets out there. Obviously, the guys that we've named, Evan Ingram, Brock Bowers, David Njoku, Dallas Goddard, George Kittle still there. You've got a significant amount of assets out there who can compete week to week, but are actually people that you want on your team, which is why, coming back to earlier, the idea of starting a Kmet when you have all of these tight ends finally who have a role in the receiving game that's not just touchdown upside, absolutely perplexes me. But I really, really like Trey McBride as a pick. He's my dynasty tight end 1, but it's 1A and 1B. And I don't have any shares of either of them because they're going too high for me at the minute. But that is a topic for another video. Kev, thank you so much for coming on, and thank you so much for being the first person to join me on Pancake Stacks. If people want to hear more from you, where can they find you?
I mean, first of all, thanks for having me on as guest number 1. I mean, it's a low bar set for the future, but I really appreciate it. It means so much to me. I know how much effort and time you're putting into this channel and this show, so really appreciate the opportunity. You can follow me on X at the Dynasty Mind. Fantasy Wildcard is where you find all my podcast content. So that's the Dynasty and the DFS show. I've also got the writing over at DLF with some smart dudes, maybe one on this stream with me right now. And yeah, just keep your eyes peeled for all of our in-season work that we're doing over at Fantasy Wildcard. Obviously, we've got the Rewind show with yourself. You've got Dynasty DFS, which I'm on, and also the Devi guys as well. Please check out all their work, and make sure you subscribe to this channel because I'm a fan. I've been watching the content and loving everything you're doing so far, Lewis. So the future's bright, and can't wait to catch up more in the future.
Thank you so much, Kev. And I just want to correct you that it's going to be an incredibly high bar to beat. I haven't got you on as a low bar, so that it's like a step up for each guest coming forwards. But thank you so much for joining me, and thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe and check out the other content on the channel. Please feel free to follow me on Twitter at ff_pancake, and please go and follow Kev as well at the Dynasty Mind. And I will see you next week when football will have happened. Football will have happened. We have football this Sunday. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.